And just for the record, let me say it. I don't believe for any second that at any time can artificial intelligence replace a person. We have to remember that these people are people, and we got to kind of, when we're talking about their problem they've got, that's got to be done with a person, a trained person. So I understand that. I'm certainly not trying to replace that. But what I'm trying to do is that these people go back to the problem is they don't even know what's wrong with them, but they don't feel right. And so we're kind of creating avenues for them to come to the system and speak to someone who comes with a Kiwi accent, or some of our clients are in Australia, they got an Australian accent. And it basically will listen to them, show empathy. It's multilingual. They can talk to it in any language. It will talk back to them in that language. And it basically guides them to the professional support.
Thank you so much for coming to my podcast. And I'm really looking forward to get to know you a bit better, even though we have had many conversations here and there. And this hour is truly dedicated to you.
Hello, everybody. It's really lovely to have you on this podcast with myself and Ivan. My name is Kevin McAfee. I am originally from Belfast in Northern Ireland, and I immigrated to New Zealand over 20 years ago now. And I wish I had done it sooner. Married to Lisa, and we got 2 kids, Neve and Joshua. And I think anything about me would be, I just love working with people. And that's what I think what you're going to find out about in the podcast today.
You came here 20 years ago and married your wife in New Zealand. You met her here?
Yeah, met Lisa here after 3.5 years being in New Zealand. And then we had it was a bit of a long distance because I was traveling with work. And then I came to Auckland and settled here and lived with her. And then we got married in Queenstown, which was up on Fernhill there on the Heritage Hotel overlooking the Remarkables. I remember speaking to the priest at the time. He was like, no, it needs to be in a church. But I said to him, look, you got to come down and see where we're going to get married. And the remarkable mountains in the background. So when he stood there on the area where we were getting married, he said, no, I see now why you've chose here. So yeah, it's a very special place for us.
Yeah. So she is a Kiwi.
Yep. She's a Kiwi. I'm
cool.
Cardinal Sin, married a Kiwi.
So what brought you to New Zealand?
I think I traveled the world initially. That's the real reason, I suppose. I bought a ticket and traveled around the world. It was back then, it was a bus stop ticket with Star Alliance. You could go to 7 cities and you could jump out of a city and travel to another city and get on a plane and go there. So there was a lot of flexibility with the flight. And when I came to New Zealand, I met a couple of Irish guys in an Irish bar in Auckland, Scottish guys. And we basically had a few beers and started to travel around. And I just felt that New Zealand was very like Ireland, but maybe not as modernized. And but I just loved it. The fact of the matter was you guys got the sun. And I think one thing that stood out for me was there was a real diversity of people here. And that's not something that I would see in Ireland. You know, it was generally Europeans, Catholic Protestants, maybe the odd Asian because they were working in the hospitals or the care centers. But here there was a huge mix. And I think that was something that stood out to me, that it didn't matter about what race or creed you were. It was just everybody was here to have a happy life. And that stood out pretty much from the start.
By the way, I just want to say this. So you really go to Irish pub and meet Scottish.
The Irish are the official gypsies of the world. There's no two ways about it. So wherever you go, if you want to meet someone, you go to an Irish pub and you'll be fine. So
really?
Yeah, like, because they'll start talking to you. Someone in the bar. I remember I was in Houston on the same travel. I went to Houston. It was a bit of a goal of mine to go to NASA, and I went to Houston and. I just jumped on a taxi and stayed it was really extremely hot, like, and that's just like, if you're from Ireland, the heat is something you can tolerate for an hour or so, but the heat was immense in Houston. And I just jumped on a taxi and said, look, can you take me to an Irish bar? And I went into they took me to I can't remember the name of the bar now, but they took me to this Irish bar, and I was standing talking to the guy at the bar, and he actually knew a friend of mine who lived in San Francisco, a football tournament. So here you are on the other side of the world from Ireland in Houston, and you're talking to a barman who knows a guy who you went to school with. He's my sister-in-law's brother, you know, so we're not officially related. Yeah, honestly, unbelievable. Yeah, so they knew Seamus, and so it was just like, this world is such a small place. But the thing about it was that, going back to the point, is if you go into an Irish bar and start, I'm not going to say they'll guarantee you'll know somebody, but they'll be pretty friendly and they'll give you some good directions on things to do or go and see or help you with whatever they can. So, and that's the idea of going to the Irish pub. And even I've been to China as well. You just jump in and say Irish pub, and they'll take, and you meet European people, or you meet people, you know, who are traveling around the same boat as you. When it's just, you just start talking, and yeah, it's just gateway to kind of making friends, I suppose.
To be honest, this is not the first time people say that, but I always thought it was a joke. No,
Oh,
literally it's a
it's
thing.
the truth. And it's even worse after a few Guinness, especially if you give me a microphone. I'll be up
Yeah.
singing from U2 or something, so.
Are you a singer? Like,
No, I wouldn't say I'm a singer, but, I wouldn't shy away from the mic after a few Guinness.
my God, I have to get you drunk one day.
No, I wouldn't put you through it. Don't worry. I wouldn't put you, the viewers, through it.
It's funny. So I know the fact is you also do quite a lot of volunteering. It's
Yeah.
something that you're passionate about.
Yeah. It's actually sort of came through the line of work. It's actually a really interesting story. I came from playing football, amateur league growing up. And I always felt like because we're going to talk about kids, because I've got a football club with kids. And I always used to feel that, like, if I was ever going to coach or be involved with players, it would be at an older age group, because they understand the game and it's easier to kind of coach and stuff. Not too old, because some people become set in their ways, but around the teenage age. And what's happened is that over the last probably 6 years, really 7 years, I've been working with kids just through a local club initially, and then I created my own club. The reason for that was because I felt there was a real missing piece of resilience within kids in the community. And I think that obviously we're going to talk a wee bit about mental health and well-being, but I really think from the ground up, we're missing a real key component. Like, if I asked you right now, or the viewers, can you give me an example in schools where the kids are taught about resilience? What would they say? There's nothing. And I know that because I've spoken to the teachers as well. And so through myself and another friend of mine, we created a project called Project Kickstarts. And we use football as the vessel to have the kids engaged. There's 2 age groups. There's 4 to 7 in the primary schools, and then there's the colleges. And we've got a total of 7 schools now that we volunteer to coach and educate the kids on things like it's okay to make a mistake. The importance of, like, it's the next thing you do is the important part. If you make that mistake, with bouncing back, it's about surrounding yourself with an environment of your friends that, you're comfortable. If you do make a mistake, they're going to pick you up. It's educating them on this. And the mindset for me is that they can take that skill set that they're educated on into the next stage of their journey through life, which is, they know if they make a mistake, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's about what you do next is the important thing. When you've got that people around you, your family, or someone who you can go and confide in and talk to. So it's a really important piece that's missing. And I focus quite heavily on South Auckland, where there's a lot of challenges. And through doing that, we have had quite a lot of engagement, even with some teachers approaching us and some parents as well. Because, as I say, we have a club outside supporting the schools. There's a club here with 140 members of kids between 4 and 13 years of age. CLM, Community Leisure Management, they have supported quite a few of those schools. They believe in the mission that we're sharing out there.
Yeah.
And we're definitely adding something different. Of course, there's other local football clubs around in the area who could support the schools. Their problem is resources. I've employed someone who basically will go into those schools and during the school hours and educate those kids over a period of months. And even how we do it is really important, because we create that consistency. So we don't go away. So it becomes instilled in them, and CLM support that as well, as I say, and they help with that. So a big shout out for them for buying into the vision.
I really like what you said about allowing oneself to make mistakes, but also ensuring that you have people surrounding you to support you where you need a place to fall back on or people to support you. What came about that though, Kevin? What drive you to do that?
I think falling into mental health. So I had an IT company prior to Wellbeing Solutions, which is the business now that we focus on mental health. And that business, we won the City Rail Link project in Auckland, and was speaking to the team down in the City Rail Link. There was a real focus on mental health in the construction sector. And I got to be honest, I was a wee bit blind to it. I wasn't aware of it. And so I started to look at ways in which I could make a difference. And what I could see is that there's 2 parts. There's like EAP, and there's psychologists in the organizations to help people and so forth. But what I felt was, it's debatable whether it deals with the issues of today, but there's a bigger piece where we need to be thinking about tomorrow, and that's the kids coming through. And so I felt that given what New Zealand's given to me, I really wanted to make a difference back for Kiwis. And the more I researched and read up, I really felt, as I said earlier in this podcast, like resilience is something that's crucial to mental health and well-being, and it's missing. And so for me, it became probably a bit of a mission, where I then started to focus on the kids. And that's where I say to you that it was a bit of a challenge for me, because I would have felt more with the teenage group, but the kids are just like little sponges, honestly. They just adapt so well, and they really listen to you. And they'll give you examples, because I asked them, because one of the things that we do in the club training, for example, is we ask them to share with us any challenges that they've had through the week and what they did about it. And the others, and it brings kids who are a bit shy, they'll then start to talk about it. So we're creating that community within the kids, that right environment within them to kind of be comfortable to talk about their challenges and understand that it's maybe something that they're facing and that they can see someone else is facing it. They're not on their own. So it's a combination of things. But I felt that was the first step, tackling the younger generation. But then it became, well, how do we actually magnify this? And that became through the power of football, through using football as a vessel, which I have a real passion for. I've been to the World Cup in Brazil. I've been to the Champions League in 1989. I've followed Manchester United. So even how we coached and played football in the UK was different from how they did it here in Australia or New Zealand. And so for me, I wanted to have a real passion to sort of map out what we could do to educate the kids and make it fun, but also adapt that resilience piece into it and their well-being and so forth. And then, as I say, it's extended on from the kids into some of the parents, and then now some of the schools are using the system and stuff.
Basically, you're using football as a vehicle to build kids' resilience. So it's not just about sports. It's really through it, understand the sense of communities and belonging, and also give them a tools that they can use for the future when they have any issues and challenges, and they understand that they have something in them that they can overcome those challenges.
I,
I think that's amazing. Yeah.
I think it's just simple. I think it needs to be adopted a lot more, and it is slowly starting to, things out there are starting to turn. I believe people are overcomplicating it. It doesn't
Mm,
need to be rocket science. It's just about some very simple
I
things
agree.
and being consistent. How many times do we hear about mental health and well-being, get
Mm,
out active, but they can't because they're depressed and down. But so if you catch them in earlier in their age group, then it becomes a norm for them. It's not like you
mm.
have to ask that, they're doing it. And we're quite diverse. We have Vietnamese, Philippines, Europeans, Indians, Chinese. We have a huge range of kids, Middle Eastern, coming to the club now. That's great because that's what I felt is that everyone needs. Whilst we did a bit of marketing on Facebook initially to get it going, the word of mouth and the working in the schools is driving it for us now. Even though the leagues have started in New Zealand and we're probably a quarter of the way through the leagues, and we still have kids coming and asking, can they join? Their parents are asking, can they join the club? So
Wow.
yeah, it's just coming from word of mouth. I'm a firm believer if you have a good product, people will come, and that's certainly what we're seeing with the club.
What do you hope to achieve though for the long run with the program? I mean, it sounds like it's growing and also it's definitely heading toward where you want it to be. And I know that is just part of many things that you're doing. So,
Yeah. I think with the club and the kids and the schools, I think we need to grow that because whilst we talk about wellbeing solutions and mental health in general, there's a lot of solutions out there that dealing with people who have mental health today. It's a little bit too late for them to start at the start. So for me, I really think we have to make some sort of a commitment. And the truth is, I don't even know where to start with this. I've just created this in South Auckland because it's on my doorstep. It reminds me a lot of Belfast, where I grew
mm,
up. And so I can sort of control that. But there needs to be a bigger pace here that's in some way supported with some capital and the right people in the right place and educating coaches and things so that they can incorporate this in. And I know that people say that they do the well-being, but it's just their mindset. They're not sort of educated to the level of what I've been educated on, and they're
mm,
able to give a proper process that
mm,
they can incorporate into what they do. And then we can start that in itself would make a huge impact on mental health within New Zealand, I believe,
mm.
because you're getting to the kids early and you're starting to create a mindset and a mentality that will strengthen them for when they do face challenges later, that they don't go down a path of self-destruction.
Absolutely. And I agree wholeheartedly, especially with what you mentioned about started from younger age. And
Mm.
also intentionally using sport as a means to help people to instill skill. So it's not just a sport itself, it's a lot more than that, isn't it? And so they learn how to cope with failure, they learn how to cope with mistake, they learn how to win but gracefully. They also learn how to be friends and supporter while receiving support at the same time. And so there's many facets within that scope which you are doing. Let's jump into Wellbeing Solution a little bit. How that also come about as a company that you set out.
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to the Study Real Link project where I realized at that point that, with the makeup that I have about wanting to help people and support them, when I heard about the suicide and you see the rates in New Zealand of how bad they were, I sort of felt ashamed that I didn't know about it because I had a really nice house and a nice life and things and business and that, and things are going well. But then you hear about these people who you're actually helping. The suicide is in the construction sector is significant. And so I felt sort of bad that I wasn't aware of this. And so it started then, researching and looking at that point in time. And what I've learned over the years is we've had to change what my mindset was through meeting leading psychologists, leading researchers, and even my own research, kind of going around the world looking at what works well and what doesn't. And ultimately, what I did was over a period of a few years, I created a checklist of what works well and what doesn't. And then started sort of looking at technology, which is where my skill set lies, and in creating process, and incorporating technology into that to kind of make things, slicker or easier. And one of the things is like what became a big challenge for me was I think that phones are a huge part to play with, people staying on their phone and seeing like Facebook, and it's sort of like they're doing better than me and everything's rosy. But then, you hear later on down the line, they're not so rosy and some things aren't going well. And I think that for me, the reason I say that is because I wanted to create something that deterred you from going to your phone. And also I wanted to create something that was going to apply to every generation, which is a big challenge out there at the minute. And I think everybody just quickly jumps towards apps and applications. And I felt that, as I said, that's something we had to stay away from. So that became a huge challenge in itself. And so then I started with like creating a mass communication tool, which was a text message process where an organization can go into a CRM and they can have all their staff listed in it. And then they can create different categories of people. So people in Auckland or people within Auckland as management versus employees and things. They create categories and they could basically send the message out, but the CRM uses their name. So we kind of integrate to a text message process, to an SMS provider, and they can write the message and the system's reading the CRM, so it has their name. So we're personalizing it, which is really important. That's the first thing, because one of the things you want to do is making sure that these people feel valued. And then the next thing was we added in the ability to be multilingual. So the mindset for me while you're hearing this is that I know that if we talk about mental health or you bring on psychologists or anyone, what they want is data and trends and things. And I think whilst I completely agree that that's important, it's not the first part of this. You have to remember that we're dealing with people who are on the other end of this phone or this message that they're going to receive, that they're not interested in giving you data. They could be on the verge of just ending things. And so for me, I wanted to make things personal, make them feel valued. And that became a text message that would go out. I think if you speak to any mental health specialist today, there's a real focus on getting data and information. And I'm not saying that this is not deliberate, obviously, but I think that they sort of have got a little bit sidetracked in the sense where it should be people first. So for me, it had to be, I wanted to create this system with the CRM system so we could personalize the message to have their name. I wanted to make it multilingual so they would feel valued. That's kind of for them. I wanted to give them the ability that when they replied back to the message, it was no cost to them. So, and that's a really important part of this, because if you look at probably, I think the stats were something around about 45% of mental health financial challenges are in there. So out of that 45%, how many probably don't have an app? So if you have an app then, and you're trying to use technology to support a solution, well, you're failing right away. So for me, having the message, the text message that goes out, they're going to receive a text message whether they've got credit on their phone or not. And the fact that we integrate the system back into a service provider, the texts are free. So when the person replies back, they sort of answer the question, they read it, it's personal, it's in their language, they can reply back to the message. It's no cost to them. And then what we're doing at that point is we're triaging the response. And that's all part of the setup when you send the text message out. And that triage response, and if they need support, if they need help instantly, we are connecting them to that professional support who can call them within minutes. So it's a very different approach to some of the solutions that are out there today. That's only obviously one solution. This next step off that for me is the part where we capture the data and the information. So up until this point, we're purely focusing on the individual, and those messages that are going out, they could be, if you think about society, it could be like just a proactive approach where you're just doing a check-in, or there could be a major event, a serious weather event, or some of the banks, they've had people held up, or there's been aggressive customers and you just want to check in. So you can literally go in and use the solution right away. And then, and ultimately, if they need that support, it'll go to the professional support, and they're obviously supporting the people within minutes. The other part to that is that the professional support, it's them when they call the individual, that the person is now being held, they're being supported. We're now starting to capture the data. If they want to give you their name or not, we can capture all that. We capture what the nature of the issue is, and their age and their demographic. We start to capture at that point. So what we've done here is we've turned the tables a little bit on the mindset at the minute, where it's always about, well, how do we capture the data at the start? You want them to put your information in at the start, and some of the solutions that we've seen, but the people, they're not interested in that. They want it to be confidential, or they're not going to open up and tell you. So the first part of what we've achieved is that confidentiality. And then when they get the professional support, they're more open to sharing what the challenge is. And that is where we capture the data. And then we actually have a proactive approach around managing the next steps, which is what we call support action. And that would go through to, an example, if they kind of advise them on something they need to do and they want to check in on them the next day, they can kind of set that all up and the system will notify the professional support to follow up and make sure that person gets that help. And what's really important about the system is we've got a hierarchy notification process. So if the person was to be contacted by that professional support the next day at 12 o'clock, and 12 o'clock comes and goes, the system will give 3 hours for the professional support to update the system. And if they haven't, it's then notifying someone else within the organization that the professional support hasn't contacted Ivan or Kevin. And so it's making sure that that person's getting that support, that we're following up and getting them the help. And if you're doing that on a regular basis with people, you're starting to capture quite a lot of data and information. So
I agree what you say because, like, let's say something or incident happens in one of the branch of the bank, and usually people will just get encouraged to download apps and using the apps, like, but without a kind of personalized greeting and even acknowledge that people that going through. But essentially, this also allowing individual to respond, then having someone who can triage the situation, helping individual to get support immediately. That's what the apps usually does, is it reserve people to go and read things or look at information instead of truly having that more interpersonal relationships where someone felt like they're being seen and heard. And so you're really trying to eliminate that kind of barrier where people is not just seen as one of the stats, but really seen as an individual where they feel if they really reach out, they're going to get the support. And then that's why you also created the follow-up process. So then if they're really going to reach out, they will get the help and support. And with the notifications going through to the service provider, whoever, to be able to see whether that person have get the help timely or not, because there's another issue, which is quite often is because no one's following up. In the end, that person goes through the
yeah.
crack. Yeah. So it's a very robust process.
Yeah, I think it captures the data, which is really important. And I think, Health New Zealand have got a big challenge in their hands right now where there's a lot of people doing a lot of different things and capturing, influential data that would really help them strategize better if they could incorporate that in, or if they capture that data in one central point. So there's a case to be kind of sort of answered there for how that can happen. But it goes further than that, with what we do at Wellbeing Solutions. So one of the more recent solutions that we brought out in December last year was the first artificial intelligence, which we call AI for You. We work with 11 labs on this basically. So what happens is that we look at the audience of who we're trying to capture. So again, it could be kids at school, or it could be, someone at work, or someone who's just lost their job, or of an older generation. And what we wanted to do was to make sure that we give them all the ability, how they feel comfortable to kind of ask the question or talk to someone. And so because EAP is not available, and also I think that what's missed here is the people part, where these people don't actually know what's wrong with them. They don't feel right, but they don't know what's wrong with them. So what happens through AI for You is you've got 3 options of reaching out. One is by phone, and it's talking to artificial intelligence. 2 is by text to text, and also is speech to speech. So the system basically allows people to be sitting in bed at night with an earpiece and a young person who's getting bullied at school, and they can text into the AI for You. And it's what's important to understand about the AI for You is it's a guide. It's not a psychologist or professional support. And just for the record, let me say it, I don't believe for any second that at any time can artificial intelligence replace a person. We have to remember that these people are people, and when we're talking about their problem, that's got to be done with a person, a trained person. So I understand that. I'm certainly not trying to replace that. But what I'm trying to do is these people go back to the problem is they don't even know what's wrong with them, but they don't feel right. And so we're kind of creating avenues for them to come to the system and speak to someone who comes with a Kiwi accent, or some of our clients in Australia, they got an Australian accent. And it basically will listen to them, show empathy. It's multilingual. They can talk to it in any language. It will talk back to them in that language. And it basically guides them to the professional support. So some organizations have got a professional support who's employed. And so the system will guide them to the professional support. Right now in Wellbeing Solutions, we have AI for You for free. And then basically that allows people to be directed to any government approved site. So for bullying, it could be Youthline, so as an example. And the idea behind that is basically that people can come in and use the system and just be made aware of what their problem is, and we'll guide them to that. So if the system picks up through asking questions empathetically that they've got depression or anxiety, it'll direct them to the government approved support. So And it's got some other smarts in there that if they are suicidal, it does kick in and ask them their name, because we obviously want to communicate that. And then notification would come through to my development team and GM.
Wow, that's amazing. What do you think the future for AI with mental health?
I think we're learning through mistakes with AI. There was a whole scenario over a year ago or 18 months ago where we're starting to see kids are turning to ChatGPT and asking, they know that they don't feel right. So they're asking ChatGPT and they're getting the wrong advice. So I think that sort of the governments need to step up and kind of identify, well, look, that's a channel that they're using. How can we create an AI for you, for everyone, that is user friendly, and change the mindset of it about how do we capture data. They've got to come away from that mindset. That's got to be the second step. And it's got to be the first step. It's got to be about the person and helping them. So whatever we do with AI or whatever technology advances, I think that's the first step that has to happen. The second step then is how we capture that data. And that's through the guiding process, guiding them to the support, the professional support, who the people can then help them and they can capture that data and go through a process of helping the person and seeing it through. And so for me, I think it just needs to be kept very simple. It's a tool that people can trust and have a confidence in, that is going to give them, it's going to make them feel valued. And right now, that's the parameters that I stay within. And I'm aware that there's all these other advancements in technology, but right now, I think people are really dubious about AI. There is a real question mark over AI in the medical environment by way of, is it going to replace the professional support and help? They're a bit nervous about that because they're reading about cases where kids are getting that wrong advice and some kids have taken their own lives. We have an obligation, I think, as a founder to make sure that we are looking for keywords in what we do that help us direct the person to the professional support that the person needs. And right now, that's what people need.
Kevin, to be honest, because I work for mental health for over 20 years and so done suicide prevention as well. I know you don't have mental health background, but I do have to say you seems to be really understand it a lot, like about the processes, what is needed and how things might be missing, especially in the referral processes and all that. How do you even get all these insights into it? I mean, if I don't know, I would thought that you've been working in the mental health sector or at least, coordinate referral process and all that. That's why you had this insight. But you, the app, the CRM system have those insights that you incorporated into it.
I think it's a really good question. I think it's a combination of research and obviously working in technology for over 15 years. I think the thing is that you've got to have the mindset. I think the truth is of it goes back to me as the founder, I suppose, in a sense where I'm very people oriented. And that's probably primarily because of where I came from in Ireland, in Belfast, and the upbringing that I've had with my mum. But I think the truth is that when I did the checklist of, and I think it was about 4 or 5 checklists that I ended up doing, but when you do that, you sort of see people are trying to get strategies from data. And in doing that, they're very much putting that at the forefront of how they should go about looking for a solution. And the problem you've got there is that they forgot about the very reason why they're doing what they're doing, which is the people. And so I don't agree with that approach. And that's why we have so many hurdles now trying to find the right solutions. I think once you actually take a step back out of that and go, well, let's look at the people first. If you look at what do they need to be personal, they need to feel valued, and they need to be confidential, and they need to trust who they're talking to. Those key things, they're the parameters of then someone opening up. Think of it like a relationship. Think of it if you just met someone, like we've recently only met. And the first time we met, you were probing me with a few questions about why I was doing what I was doing. And I was like, who's this fella here? And the more we spoke, the more I started to trust you. And the more we opened up, and now you have me on a podcast. And I think that's the very essence of what we're trying to achieve here. When I'm speaking to the organizations, again, it's quite popular in Australia. What we do is they use the text messaging process to their team to kind of educate them on different facets of the business and that they can start to trust it. It's in multilingual. It's, so they're sending out, and the people start to trust the solution. And then they would then start to bring in managing psychosocial risks and ask them about their challenges or any issues that they've got. Because they've trusted the system or they're familiar with the text and they know it's no cost to them and it's in their language and it's sent them by name. That's the personal component right there. And over time, then they trust it. And so now they're asking those questions and the engagement you get is increased significantly and the honesty. They're going to tell you what they think. And so that's what I've tried to achieve with the text messaging process. Not even to take away the fact of when I had my other business, one of the key challenges that we had, I remember, was we were able to see people on sites when they were kind of in a geo-fenced area. And when the mosque shooting occurred, I was just coming back from a flight in Wellington and we could see people on the ground where they were, but we couldn't actually communicate to them. And so the point about that is that the system needed to be diverse enough where outside influences occur every day. Like There could be a terror attack. There could be anything serious that happens, a lockdown somewhere, and you just need to check on your people. And you
Mm,
need to have a solution that's diverse enough to do that. And that's
mm.
the again, covering each generation. And if people don't have money on their phones, and they're not going to have the app, it's not going to work. And so again, the text message became quite important too, making sure we captured everyone, maximizing engagement. And that's part of it.
I think it's really smart of you to use very simple solutions to cultivate that kind of engagement, because you're right. In the end of the day, it's about the engagement to make people trust the system enough to also reach out. And so that's why the system always has a person behind it instead of just the system itself without someone else managing it. I think that is the biggest difference compared to apps, because apps replacing all of that, but yet you still have someone actively engaging and monitoring and helping and supporting individual in the instances, especially where there is a setting around
Yeah.
to capture. I think that is amazing. Yeah.
I think the personal approach with the apps is really important. I think if you look at some of the solutions that are out there now, it's not knocking them, because they actually are sort of leading the way at the moment, in the
Mm,
sense where they're getting information to people who need the help. But the problem is these people don't want to read pages and pages of information.
mm,
They just don't. They're not going to do it. And what if they have multiple challenges? If they have depression, anxiety, and substance abuse, what if they have can you imagine how much information that solutions are going to give them to
yeah.
read? It's not going to work, like, so for me, when I
Yeah.
looked at that, it was like, we've got to kind of use AI that it can actually sort of have that conversation with people and
Mm,
engage with them. And if they talk in a certain language, it'll talk back to them that language. If the system's speaking back to them, it'll be quiet if they talk or say something more. We've got to make them feel like it's a person that they're speaking to, but also never forgetting that it's a guide. It's listening for keywords to kind of navigate or guide them off to that professional support. That's the important part of it.
And I like the fact is, I mentioned about AI for you. You say a lot of people don't even know what they're experiencing, which is true. Like they might felt something is off, but they can't articulate that. They're not going to immediately pick up a phone call and make an appointment to see a counselor or something. So they need kind of like a big bridge to be able to first understand what's going on with themselves first. As because of that, they probably wouldn't even approach their friends,
Yeah.
because if that it not even making sense to themselves. Like, who can I talk to? I think that is part of the reason why people in the end nowadays using AI, because it's a lot more safer and no one's going to tease them. And so you're picking out the gaps and know that, like need to have something a lot more robust, safe, and also, like proven to be able to bridge that gaps. That's why you created the AI for you, literally, to
Yeah.
meet that gap. Yeah.
I think one of the key things we haven't even mentioned this yet is that I remember, this is probably my work ethic as well, like where you want to get things done quick and fast and move. Well, I think we have to keep that level of intensity with this as well. So when someone
Mm,
reaches out and needs help, everything moves quick. Like, we
mm,
cannot wait until Monday next week to kind of get them an appointment, or it has to
yeah.
happen now.
Yeah.
So when they have indicated that they need the support, whether it be the text message or the AI for you, the system is navigating them through that professional help right away. And obviously they can make the call whether they want to contact it. But in organizations, we can direct them straight to the professional support, the counselor in house, and they can reach out to them. So we can do that for organizations. But for the public, we can just direct them, because I think, one, when they come on the call or the message, however they're kind of engaging with the system, they don't know what's wrong with them. But once the system advises them where they can go, well, they're at that point, they're like, oh, so I've got anxiety. The first thing is, it's not that I wouldn't say that we're diagnosing them, but the system's that it's
Yeah.
navigating
Yeah.
them, guiding them off to, it's taking those words that they've said and identified that with the depression, anxiety, or substance abuse, and it's navigating them through the relevant support channel.
Yeah.
And it's the first step. Once they get in and get them to the professional support, then they can really ask the questions that are required to be asked, and use their experience and excellence to kind of get the person the right support that they need, and then start the follow up and make sure that the person gets what they need.
So, Kevin, if someone's or organization are looking for a tool set which you have put together, what is the best way to contact you? Or, of course, I will put a link of, Wellbeing Solutions, which is very easy to find, but how would they get in touch?
They can get in touch from the website, or they can contact me direct at kevin@wellbeingsolutions.co, or they can just drop a line on LinkedIn. We also have a Facebook account as well. So any one of those, they're more than welcome to reach out.
And what do you hope, in the future with the tools that, you have created in the mental health space, especially in suicide prevention?
I think short and medium term, it'd be really great to engage with the New Zealand government in some capacity. in assisting people here with the technology that I've created, because the problem deep down inside, every time you hear of a suicide or even talking to some people, either heard someone's had a bit of a problem with substance abuse, and you just feel it's another person who could probably have been helped earlier. So, and right now, New Zealand really doesn't have a fix like for fixing the problems, and what they do have is sort of not exactly as sharp as probably as what we've created. So my point about that is it's going to continue. We just want to try and get out there to the right audience and help them. And the second part is actually the younger generation coming through. I really think it's got to be like a two-pronged approach where we are supporting the schools more, because they're the next wave coming through. And what it's like, if running a country was your business and you knew there was a problem that was going to just keep happening, wouldn't you go to the stem of that problem and start to fix that? And the issues that you have today, still manage that and address it, but you go right down to the root cause analysis of it and you'd fix it there, or at least minimize the risk. And that's the kids at school. That's how I see it. So it's a two-pronged approach. One, it's about targeting that audience today and supporting organizations and businesses and the government publicly. And then there is the actual the kids of the next generation coming through. Otherwise, it's going to be more and more millions and millions of dollars that we're spending doing the same things over again, or in the hope that we find a miracle that it's just not going to happen. But what we can do is look at some smarter ways to do things that can improve well-being and minimize the risk for us.
I think that's really smart of you, especially, I'm talking to many people who are in the space of developing apps and all that with mental health well-being. I have never actually come across someone's vision is so clear and also know the boundaries, especially in the space of artificial intelligence. And I think probably that's the reason why I really believe, and of course I've seen your products, but also more so believe in you because of your integrity and also of who you are. And I know what you're trying to achieve and change as well. And in some way, I felt like almost like a personal mission for you too. It's not just about a business model as such, which I respect and admire the most. Kevin, just a couple more questions. First is, have I missed any things that you want to?
I think that it's a great opportunity for me to share a wee bit about what we do and why we do what we do, but it's not something I feel that I can do alone. We do need some help and support from, people within the right environment, within the Health New Zealand and the government, to kind of see this hopefully and kind of pick it up as well, or have a conversation with me. Not necessarily use Wellbeing Solutions, but maybe just have a conversation on thinking different. And
I hope they do from my from my point of view.
yeah, that'd be
I
nice.
hope they do.
Yeah.
And I ask all my guests this question: if you can go back to your younger self, what advice would you give to him?
Yeah. What a good question. God, I'd say travel. I mean, you learn an awful lot about yourself when you travel. I didn't travel until I was 29. I had a very high work ethic. And so when I dropped out of school after doing my A levels, I went into Tesco's, which is a supermarket in the UK, Excel program, became a manager, fast tracked into a management program after 10 months. And past that, went into Sainsbury's, or did Tesco's for 8 years, then went to Sainsbury's, won a retail award and things. And so for me, a lot of things that people do later, I did very early in my career. And then at 29, I went and traveled the world, and you really realize at that point, I did it on my own. So I was meeting people as I go as I traveled, and you find yourself, you find that you can go to somewhere else, broaden your horizons, and that your personality and the makeup of person you are, you can be a success somewhere else. You can go and make a living for yourself there. And I think that there's a real sense of achievement that comes with that. Not right away, but later, once you've actually established yourself, and it's people look up to you when they hear your story that you've came away from Belfast and Ireland. Why did you come to New Zealand? And you've been here 20 years. Like, what made you come here? And you just say, travel the world, love the place. But there's a bit more to it than that. But it's really what it gives you is an unbelievable wealth of confidence to give things a go. Just go and have a go.
Yeah, I agree because it really expands your horizon about the world, isn't it? And also the way you see things. And even though as an adult, you have all the skill set that you needed to, but when you travel to another country, you really tested who you are as a person as well as the skills that you develop, because you have to resolve anything right there and then. It depends on the problem solving skill and test your personality and all that. So I know what you mean by traveling. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kevin. It's been It's been amazing. It's even better to hear about, like the football club that you've been doing and what you want to achieve. But I think what I really just want to say is thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for putting an effort by creating something that is meaningful and purposeful. And I hope the world get to see and use it and also benefit from it. And so at least, saving a few more lives. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I hope the same myself. And I think thank you to you for having me on the podcast, because that's another step in the right direction for, educating people in New Zealand on the solution. So hopefully something good comes from this as well.